Alright, welcome back to the second and final episode of Sonic the Hedgehog for the Game Gear. We're rolling into the Labyrinth Zone, no pun intended. And you will notice right away that unlike with the Green Hill Zone, this is not in fact just a remixed version of the Labyrinth Zone soundtrack from the Genesis. It's its own song. Now, I will say this is definitely a weaker song than the Genesis version. However, I still stand by soundtrack, and this is pretty good. Now, what's kind of funny is you get quite a bit of slowdown on this level, as you are probably noticing. And I don't know if it's just that, or if it's also that the timer is slower, but you'll notice that it takes a really, really long time for your counter to go down to 0. In fact, even during practice runs when I didn't know where I was going, I was in basically zero danger of ever drowning. Although I will say this level is where the game starts to amp up the difficulty just a little bit. I still would not consider this a difficult game, even as Sonic games go. Not really that difficult. It's an easier one. But for me, that was actually a plus because, you know, I didn't want to spend 30 hours on Sonic the Hedgehog for the Game Gear. I wanted to get through it, enjoy it, and move on to Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for the Game Gear, which will be coming eventually. Alright, once again into these stupid bonus stages. I gotta say, they are nice, as I mentioned, because you can get real easy extra lives and continues from them, but man, they are just a pain. If not for the fact that you could easily just go through them and skip them, like I'm trying to do here, but not quite working out for me. There we go. That wasn't too bad, right? By the way the sign works, the reason it's giving Eggman is you finish with less than 50 rings. I might be not 100% correct with this, so if somebody knows, feel free to correct me. You finish with less than 50 rings and not on an increment of 10, I think you'll get Robotnik. If you finish on an increment of 10, but don't get 50 rings, you will get bonus points, and if you finish with above 50 rings, you'll get a bonus stage, or something like that. I don't know, I didn't pay that much attention to it, honestly. Most levels you're going to be finishing with over 50 rings, so it's not really that much of an issue. One thing that I found as I was playing this is that you can actually, although the run is just ridiculously slow underwater, like that's my maximum speed, if you do the roll, you'll actually gain a little bit more speed underwater. You see what I mean about the underwater stuff? Like, I looked at that and went, nah, I can just go get that box first. I guess I didn't mention it, by the way. It's now that we're, you know, 25 minutes into the playthrough, or 4 minutes into episode 2. Those little boxes with the down arrow, that's a checkpoint. No signposts, or whatever those things are. Did I talk about yet, by the way, that despite the fact that the Game Gear really, in a lot of ways, is not a very powerful system, these colors and palettes are actually pretty impressive, especially considering this was out at the time of the original Game Boy. Like, if you just look at the tile set for the backgrounds, they look really nice. Like, almost, well, I won't go that far, but they look comparable to the Genesis version. Not necessarily in the sprites, but the backgrounds definitely look really good. That's gonna definitely be the easiest emerald to find. I think. I don't think anyone would really disagree with that. That's 4 out of the 6, which means we must have 2 zones left. Alright, getting better at this. Alright, what horrible tricks does he have in store for us this time? And by horrible, I mean ineffective, not, like, frightening. You know what's funny is that I know this came up before, and they probably have no relationship to each other whatsoever, but jumping over the spikes right there really does remind me of that one part in Hydra City Zone, where you have to do something similar to jump towards, I think, an extra life. It's just kind of a weird coincidence. I gotta say, this boss was actually probably the hardest one in the game. You can reliably count on 3 hits there, although I have gotten 4 in one of my test runs. But sometimes you'll get hit, and I'm still continuing on with the My Pet Shield thing. I really didn't want to lose my shield. The other thing that I had happen several times was I got hit by those at the end in the practice runs, and I was like, well, that's no good. I did kill him fast enough in all my runs, this one and then the practice runs. I never figured out if you can drown on that level. That would be pretty mean. I would assume you could, but I didn't really time it. So who knows? Ah, scrap brain. Interestingly, this would be, well, other than final zone, this would be the final zone. This would be the final zone, other than the zone that's literally called final zone. So we actually have another zone after this one that is not final zone. That's kind of neat. Once again, this is an original composition for the background music. Definitely not as good as the Genesis version. That's one of the better tracks in Sonic history. But I was still, at the end of my practice runs, I was still singing this one or humming it in my head. And when we get outside, just look, those backgrounds, for something on a handheld at this time, that's pretty impressive. Alright. No bonus stage. I'm totally okay with that. Alright, this is probably the hardest act in the entire game, or at least the most complicated one. This took me a few practice runs before I actually figured out what the heck I was doing. First of all, there is this part coming up where you have to wait for the fireball to pass overhead, right here. Because if you jump straight up, you will lose your shield. And as Sonic would say, that's no good. By the way, I'd just like to point out, I'm not writing in these Sonic puns. Like, I'm not writing these, I'm just saying what comes to mind. And it's really frightening that either these Sonic memes are fitting so well, or I just have so many Sonic memes on my brain. Either one of those is not a particularly good thought. But anyways, let's just move on. So other than the little thing on the wall that shows you what floor you're on, you're probably thinking, like, am I even going down? There's a little bit of a puzzle element to this one, which is definitely not something you would have seen in the Genesis version. We've got these teleporters, we've got basically a door puzzle. Pretty weird stuff for a Sonic game. and then you fall down here. The other ones will kill you, but this one will not. This is for the emerald, though. So, that's, you know, it's a leap of faith, but it's for sort of a secret thing, so I can kind of forgive it. By the way, I did, in one of my practice runs, run across this without jumping, but then in another practice run, I fell down and died, so that's why I opted to just play it safe there. Alright, so the reason we hit the door switch, well, I gotta go back through because I messed something up. I think I did, anyway. Anyway, the point is we have to flip one of the switches so that the door at the very top of the first room will open. It's... just trust me on this one. So yeah, we'll just go back through here. And now we can go this way. So yeah, actually I didn't mess something up, I guess. And this is the first room we were in, but now we can go through here. And there you go. That all makes sense, right? Robotnik says no, I guess. Ooh, I might have to amend a previous statement that I made during this playthrough. Remember when I said that Act 1 had the easiest, or Zone 1 had the easiest boss fight? Well, if you count the entire level, then this one's definitely harder, but, well, you'll see. It's another thing you would never see in a Genesis Sonic game, at least a core Sonic game, is this weird puzzle section where you have to figure out how to get through the doors. By the way, if you go to the right there, that takes you back to that extra life that we saw, but I opted to just skip it. And then they put that button there for the door that you don't even need. Weird. And that was the boss fight. So yeah, I'm gonna have to say, if you're counting just boss fight, that one definitely would be the easiest boss fight. But if you're counting the entire stage, then I think the first one still qualifies. And, ooh, Skybase. So normally we would be going into Final Zone right now if we were on the Genesis. This is sort of a proto-Wing Fortress, although this one totally reminds me of like a Mega Man level. You got these lightning things that go off, and you have to really time it properly, because it's not very forgiving. You got the, like, this is totally just a Mega Man level. We've had some Mario levels, and now a Mega Man level. It's kind of interesting. Oh yeah. Totally. Straight out of Mega Man. Like if I only had the rush trampoline or whatever to get through this. Or, I can't remember what it was called, but in the first Mega Man where you could put down those little platforms. That was actually awesome. Like you had a weapon that just made platforms that you could jump on. It was great. But I guess we should keep talking about Sonic, huh? Aha! Didn't expect that, did ya? And now we start to see some really extreme slowdown. This is a pretty good song. I still think Bridge Zone or whatever was the best one, but... like how we can make part of the sprite disappear when we crouch here. By the way, you only need to go this way if you want to get the emerald. It is definitely trickier than going the normal way. And one thing I found in my practice runs was it seems like the position of these turrets is random, so you can get better or worse placement, where you might have to do some, have a little fancy footwork going on in order to avoid getting shot. Or sometimes they'll just completely miss you. Seriously, just look at the clock and like how slow it is ticking. Craziness. Yeah, like right here. Okay. It's funny because this way basically skips the entire stage. Although this is a fairly short stage anyway. Alright, if you hit that thing, you're screwed, so don't do it. Apologize. Alright, and that's the last emerald. By the way, you know what would have just made my day right here? Is if those were shooting bullet bills. Oh, would have been great. So there we go. Got it. And now we move into the final zone, which is not final zone. But it sort of is final zone. You'll see what I mean. See? Now, it is worth noting that he actually takes 12 hits here, rather than 8. So, if you want to keep your pet shield, you gotta dodge out of the way a couple times. And, this is like one of my favorite parts of the game, for sure. Like, oh no, he got away. I just stood there and watched him teleport. And then he's just going along, minding his own business, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere... That's another place where, like, seriously, you could just base boost that and, like, deep fry it. Like, deep fried memes. Be great. But I'm not going to do that this time. I won't subject you to that. Alright, so we got the good ending. We got all the emeralds. And you know what that means. Ooh, ah. What it in fact means is that we get points added to our final score. That's the only difference. I mean, not that getting all the emeralds in the Genesis version made that big a difference, but, I mean, at least we got to see a bunch of little animals dance around. And he breaks 500,000. Aw, yeah. Seriously? Like, does it have to make us sit through? Didn't quite break 800,000, but I'm sure you'll forgive me, right? Right? Alright, everybody. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, Sonic the Hedgehog for the Game Gear. I will be doing Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for the Game Gear and trying to make my way through pretty much all of them. we're going to get through most of these Sonic games. I say most because I'm not doing all of them. Very good game. I very much enjoyed it. It's easy to find a way to play it, and you'll probably beat it in one sitting, have a good time, and then be good to go. So I will leave it at that. Once again, thank you. I'll leave you with the credits, and I'll see you next time. Take 'em home, Sonic.